Hello and welcome to a special bonus episode of Sports and Songs podcast. We're joined today with Jillian Hiscock, owner of the bar, a bar of their own in Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And we also have Andy here. Andy, how are you doing today?
Doing good, thanks.
Good,
Thanks for
good.
being on the show.
My name's Dan. We're the co-hosts here of the show. We do some bonus episodes like this, Jillian, in the case of you don't want to commingle a good topic with one of our normal shows. So we do an isolated show like this, and we wanted to bring you on. So we're so happy to have you on. Say a little bit about yourself, Jillian, and how you got the bar going. It's a women's sports bar in Minneapolis, and tell us all a little bit about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me on. As you said, my name is Jillian Hiscock. I use she, her pronouns. And yeah, I'm the owner of a bar of their own, which is the Midwest's first sports bar to exclusively show women's sports. And yes, that's a mouthful. And yes, we say that intentionally because there was a lot of confusion when we first started. We were calling it a women's sports bar. And a lot of people incorrectly assumed that meant that it was only for women. And that's absolutely not the case. As you know, you both have been in. We want to make sure that people know it's a super inclusive place for people of all races and genders and sexualities and families and all of that. And so pivoted pretty quickly to talking about it as a sports bar that exclusively shows women's sports. And yeah, the idea was really born in April of 2022. Jenny Wynn, a woman named Jenny Wynn, opened the Sports Bra out in Portland, Oregon, which was the very first.
That was the Sports Bra. Okay, got it.
Yes, so the very first women's sports bar was out in Portland in April of 2022, and I happened to be working for the women's Final Four basketball tournament that was taking place here in Minneapolis at that time. And so I had been surrounded by women's sports fans, had just put on this massively successful women's sporting event, and we were just riding this super big high. And heard about the sports bar opening, and we were all like, oh my gosh, who's going to do it here? Fully not at all thinking at that point it would be me. I have a background in higher ed and nonprofits and not in restaurant and bar ownership. But nobody did. And so more and more time passed, and we kept waiting for somebody else to do it. And finally, in talking with my wife, we decided that it was going to be the right time and the right place for us to do it. And we opened here on March 1st of this year.
That's great. I like the location. It's not too big, because sometimes you get all excited. You buy a big building and you fill half of it, So I thought it was a really nice location you got there because we had to double check. Like we went there for the Saints game. So when Dan put out, bar in Minneapolis, I said, are you sure? Because you're right there. You're 15 minutes from CHS. You're 10 minutes from this. A great location for a pregame, if you will.
Yeah. So yeah, that was really intentional too. We wanted, I had a couple of non-negotiables in terms of what we were looking for in a space. But one of the things that was really important for me was that it was in a community. I wanted to be surrounded by other small businesses and easily walkable and places that people could go, but also wanted it to be relatively centrally located because yeah, we have people that come before Lynx games. We have people that came before PWHL hockey games, and those are in opposite downtowns.
Yep.
And so to be able to have a spot that's pretty easy to get to, regardless of which direction you're heading, is a big bonus for us.
Now, I also like the location. Just to follow up on that, it's for listeners. It's not downtown Minneapolis. It's not downtown St. Paul. It's in between. It's in the neighborhood in Minneapolis. Right off Franklin. So it's a good spot. Now, what was in that space before you got in there?
Yeah, so it since 1979, actually, it had been a place called Tracy's Saloon and Eatery, which was a bit of a neighborhood watering hole, community favorite kind of place. And so long history within the neighborhood of having good food and having, good beer and all that kind of stuff. And so we worked really closely with the previous owner to try to uphold as many of the kind of traditions and space and things that people loved about it, while also having our own spin on it to make it our own as we work forward to opening it. So it's fun to have people that were Tracy's regulars be bar of their own regulars now, and have folks that had a long experience. We've had people come in that are like, we had my first date with my wife sitting in that booth, 20 years ago or something like that. So, so that kind of stuff is really fun for us.
Now I see locally, you had no problem getting jerseys from the local teams to be up there. Have you had other teams like around, like say, other states want to say, hey, we want our jersey in your bar. Or, I know you got some Caitlin shoes there. That was pretty neat. But and also my childhood hero, Billie Jean King, cardboard cutout there.
She actually came to the bar last week.
Saw that.
Did you know that?
I
Yes,
saw that. Yes. So to date myself, growing up, my hero, Billie Jean King, playing tennis. So but have you had other teams saying, hey, I know we're not local, but here's our jersey, or other WNBA teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the other thing that I wanted to make sure was that people felt like all of their teams were represented here. We're not a Minnesota women's sports bar. We're a women's sports bar. And so, yeah, we have stuff hanging up from the Aces, Las Vegas Aces team. We have a championship banner from the Washington Mystics WNBA team.
Okay.
We have a USA Rugby jersey that was sent to us, soccer scarves from the San Diego Wave and from Angel City FC. So there's definitely teams from other parts of the country. Actually, even the world. We had an Australian football team send us a signed jersey from one of their players that hangs above a big booth in our corner. So, yeah, we've had stuff come in from literally all over the world for us to hang on our walls.
So it's like Christmas every time UPS shows up with a box.
It is a little bit. I went away for a weekend and I came back and there was like 5 new things on my desk in my office, and I was like, where do all these things come from?
You can try to rotate that all around every now and then. Like,
I mean, we're getting to the point we're gonna have to, because our wall space is getting shorter and shorter by the week. Last week I went and hung up a bunch of new stuff, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do here pretty soon. So
overlap some things.
Yeah. So to touch on that for the listeners out there, there is a ton of memorabilia, sports memorabilia on the walls that if you're going there to eat or have a drink, take your drink with you, and it's going to take 15 minutes and walk around and check out all of the memorabilia on the walls and all the little corners of the building and the locations. There's stuff everywhere that you just have to take a look around and appreciate all what's there. There's the Maya Moore jersey, of course, the Billie Jean King, the cutout. Caitlin Clark's shoes I saw were on the wall, but there's a lot of historical stuff there. A great memorabilia spot. I told Andy when we were there, when we left, I felt like I was walking to a Hard Rock Cafe for women's sports. I mean, that's what that is what it's like. Now, Jillian, the food, we can't leave the food off. The menu was absolutely fantastic. I remember having a queso burger. They have great appetizers there, a whole bunch of food selections with burgers and things, a lot of fun drinks, the local regular beer, a lot of fun cocktails as well. And so how did all that come together? You said you didn't have the background in restaurant business, but you got some fantastic options there for food.
Yeah, no, that was also something that I know that I wanted it to be a place that people felt like they could come and sit and watch an entire game and not feel like, what am I going to do other than just drink beer here all day? Not that there's anything wrong with that, but wanted to make sure that folks had some options. And so making sure that we had different dietary restrictions and preferences covered when it came to our menu was important. So gluten-free, dairy-free, vegan, vegetarian, all of those things are covered. And then same with kind of our alcohol and beer selection. We wanted to make sure that we were prioritizing as many women, non-binary and trans owned companies as we could. And so we have lots of really great local women-owned breweries on tap, which a lot of times people didn't even realize they were women-owned breweries, which is one of the fun things.
I didn't know about the bent paddle. I didn't know that.
Yes, bent paddle. Yes, 50% women-owned. Actually went to college with 2 of the owners. So long history. I have a long history with bent paddle, but it's actually the beer part was a little bit easier for me. I have some background in the beer industry from planning some beer events locally here. So that part was a little bit easier for me coming up with the beer list. The cocktails, I worked very closely with my team to help develop during our training. We were like, okay, we should have a cocktail that's like a Paloma, or we should have a cocktail that's like an old fashioned. How do we make that our own? And so that was a lot of fun coming up with that, both our cocktails and our mocktail selection, because again, we wanted to make sure that we had things for folks that choose not to drink or are sober to be able to have other than just having soda or water on for them. And then the food piece was probably the thing I was most scared for because I'm not a cook. I don't have that cooking experience. And we were really lucky to work with our food distributors, US Foods, who helped us basically bring our menu to life. I sent them this long email of all of these things that I wanted to make sure we had, menu items I knew we wanted to have. Again, some of that dietary stuff I wanted to make sure that we were paying attention to. And then they brought us actually into their test kitchen using some of their products, and they had cooks that helped us put together the menu and try some different things and do a little bit of feedback. So that was a really great starting off point for us. And then similarly, once my staff started in the beginning of February, they kind of made some tweaks based on now that we're in our space and we have all of our equipment and we have all of our food, this item doesn't work because it takes too long for us to get this out while making this. So there's a lot of nuance involved in all of that I didn't have experience with. And I was given some very good advice to hire a really good team, and we've done that. So they've been able to really help make sure that part of the business is humming along. And yeah, I get comments all the time about how like we really just came to watch sports, but we didn't actually expect the food to be that good, and it was really good. So
Yeah,
That's
was.
how we went and go in there. I'm going to watch the sports, have a beer. Okay, I'll try a burger. Let's see. And the burger ended up being really good. It's just, I wasn't expecting a lot. Again, okay, it's a bar. They got a griddle and back. Let's see what it can do.
We thought there'd be some bar grub there, but a very good menu. The other thing is that the staff, fantastic staff.
Yes.
Super helpful. Just a great location there. Great staff. Food came out good on time, reasonably priced. Cocktails were good. It's just we had a good experience hanging out in there. And like I said, we went to do a pregame just before we went to a St. Paul Saints baseball game, but we wanted to get to this. And we had talked about before of let's get there to watch the PWHL professional women's hockey. Didn't get around to watching that title.
You would have had to wait in probably a really long line. I'm not
right. That's why we didn't go. Look at the things.
And we thought to ask you for the show, how packed then does it get for something like that? The Final Four women's basketball. We all know that the TV ratings went through the roof. But what was like
special for Tuesday night, didn't you?
Yeah, so one of the Elite Eight games happened on a Monday night, and we are typically closed on Mondays and Tuesdays, but we had to open. There was not there's certain events that we just know we have to open for. There's always going to be sporting events on Mondays and Tuesdays, and we're going to miss some of them, right? Like there's no way that we're going to catch everything, but that was one that felt pretty important to open. It ended up being also the game that Iowa was playing in, and so it was even more important for us to open because we've had such great support from Iowa fans. Yep. But yeah, we have technically 100% fire or 100-person fire capacity, and we have hit that often for large sporting events. And so the PWHL games, almost always we were on a waiting list. Sometimes the hard part about a sports bar, right, is that once you fill up, you're basically on a wait until the end of the game because people aren't getting up and leaving after they finish their meal. And so, so it's helping people understand that like, hey, you got here 10 people after we filled up, and so you're probably not going to get in until the end of the game. So, so that has been an occurrence that happens during large events. But on a regular night, I think we're always concerned that people are going to be afraid that they're never going to be able to get in and not come. And the reality is, for most, like on a casual Wednesday night, or even for like a Minnesota Lynx home game, you're going to be able to come in and watch those games and get a seat without having to wait too long. There is definitely a big energy when there's, watch parties and away games. We actually this weekend held 2 watch parties for the Minnesota women's ultimate Frisbee team. We have a professional ultimate Frisbee team. And I tell you, they packed the place. Like it was insane.
Really?
They were watching. There was a group over there cheering on something. Like, what are they watching? I think it was that Frisbee in the corner there.
Yeah. Some of those niche sports that don't get as much coverage have some of the most rabid fans because they're not used to being able to watch their teams compete ever. And so, yeah, ultimate Frisbee, rugby, roller derby, women's football, like those sports bring in some of the largest crowds of fans.
Yeah, the guy next to us was schooling us on the roller derby, how it's.
Oh.
I said, that's not what I grew up watching. And he goes, no, they got rid of this. He gave us all the rule changes. I'm like, oh, great.
Oh yeah, it's hardcore. It's hardcore.
No.
Yeah, and it's very lax too. We were sitting up at the bar, and someone says, "Hey, can you switch over to this game too?" They gave the remote, turn it on, no big deal. So it's so much sports. I think people think that it's going to be just the hockey, the basketball, and the common sports. But like I said, with the Frisbee, the roller derby, the rugby, the women's soccer, all of these other sports that are going on, it doesn't have to be live either. Mm-hmm. If there's nothing on that time on some of the TVs, there's things I'm sure running on the back on delay. and whatnot, repeat reruns or documentaries, or even running.
No,
but it's a good atmosphere.
Coming up here in June, end of June at Target Center is the gymnastics Olympic trials. Now, I suppose if you dig on cable, you'll find it. I suppose you'll be having stuff like that going on, events, if not on TV, supporting them.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. We have a lot of really exciting stuff that's happening locally. I think we've been really lucky to be able to work with a lot of our local sporting agencies and teams to help make sure that we're promoting attendance at all of those events that are happening in town. Like I'm leery about hosting like a big watch party for a Lynx game, because when they're home, I want people to go to the game. Like It's right there. Like go to the game. The tickets are affordable. It's very close. It's very easy to get to. And so we tend to host watch parties for more events that are out of town, because we want to make sure that we're encouraging people to get to those games in person. And we know that's not feasible for everybody, or that's not how they prefer. So we definitely are showing all of those games. For things like the Olympic trials coming up, absolutely, we're going to be doing some work in conjunction with that. You know, my dream, I was a gymnast for 15 years, so it would be a dream of mine to have any of those gymnasts come into town when they're in town competing. But it's obviously that's not the reason they're here, so they got to put that priority first. But with the Olympics coming up, we have the Stonewall National Tournament taking place here in Minnesota later in July. So any of those events that come through town, we see a really great kind of spillover. And things like you guys mentioned, coming in for before Saints game, when the Frozen Four men's hockey tournament was at Excel Center, we had a ton of people that would come in before they were going down to the X to watch men's hockey. So it doesn't have to be just coming into town to watch women's sporting events. It's people coming in that want to check out the bar because they want to see a place where women's sports are prioritized.
And we've always kind of pushed the women's sports here a lot, because one thing I've said a lot on it, and don't hit me if this comes out wrong, but I like watching women's sports more than the men's, because the men are playing to be on Sports Center and the women are playing to win. Am I wrong saying that?
I say often, I mean, I have one of my dearest friends is a huge NBA fan, and he was really like, the W is so boring, blah. And I was like, come to a game with me. Right. Just come to a game, because when I watch NBA games, all it is some dude running down the court, dunking it, no defense, no team, no play calling, no schemes, nothing. It's like one and done, and just see who can run back and forth as fast as possible. Whereas the women's game, there's so much strategy involved. There's so much scouting and defensive matchups that are taking place. And last night at the Lynx game, I was watching Bridget Carlton matched up with Enrique Gumbawale. They play different positions, but that was like Bridget's our best defender, and Enrique's their biggest shooter. So
you gotta do what you gotta do. Yeah,
BC is gonna be guarding Enrique. So seeing that kind of mentality play out. And I think there's just a lot more, from my perspective, a lot more of that teamwork and collaboration involved in the women's sports that you just don't always see in men's sports. Because to your point, it's not about making a highlight reel; it's about bringing about a team win at the end. So it's fun to watch women's sports.
Right. That's why I enjoy it too. Or watching the Division III or Division II basketballs for men, because they want to play to win. It's love of the game, not love of the dollars.
Yep.
Speaking of the dollars,
yes, go ahead, Andy.
I was going to bring this up. I'm going to bring up Caitlin Clark, the elephant in the room when you talk women's sports, kind of in a way. In a way, I was talking to Dan a little bit ahead of time. I kind of compare Caitlin Clark to Jackie Robinson in the fact that she's kind of picked to help carry the women's sports. Like Jackie was like, hey, show how the Negro League is good. But Jackie was well-versed in speaking, knew how to watch his temper, this and that, and the other thing. I think Caitlin's in that same part. She was kind of picked. Angel Reese is a great player. If my daughter, if she was old enough, she's too old now, but if she was younger, watch Angel Reese's game. Don't watch her interviews, though. Don't watch her social media. Watch her game. Watch Caitlin's interviews, but watch Angel Reese's game. Do you think Caitlin was kind of picked for that, for her interviews and her temperament and the lack thereof, if you will?
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I think Caitlin whines more than Diana Taurasi, maybe. So, and that's a high threshold. But I think people like players like Caitlin Clark, that do embody this on and off court presence.
Right.
Media love them. and they have this way of gathering attention, right? And Caitlin is an incredible player. There's not any question about it. Like you said, Angel's an incredible player,
Yep.
and I think it's how they have come across in the media, or how they have been presented by other players or their coaches or other teams and things like that. That I think it's natural that somebody like Caitlin would get as much attention as she does, because she is what so many people are, right? Which is like kids that just love the game,
Yep.
that just grow up loving the game.
Mhm.
And again, I think to the point of her demeanor, I think one of my favorite moments of the season was watching her dad curse her out for yelling at the
Right.
refs during
Yes.
a game, because that would have been my dad. My dad would have been like,
Yes.
"You talk back to the umpire, you sit next game."
Yeah.
Like,
I'll go come pull you off the course. You know?
done. And so you can see that that's kind of been built into her as an athlete, which in a way that I really respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I thought she's, like I said, she's a good player, but she's got that meaner. And also, I feel bad for the girls for the WNBA this year. Exactly, they come off the college season, a month off, you go into the regular season, and okay, maybe Caitlin and some of the international players, the gal for the Sparks, I'm going blanking on her name, but there's a month off. Well, unless you make the Olympic team, then there's no month off. They go to what I wrote down, September 19th for the regular season. That's over a year.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, plus you're traveling to France for 3 weeks and coming back, you know. So if they can make it and not have some kind of like anxiety attack or something,
but
or
injuries too,
injuries,
that's a big
just
part of it.
healthy.
Like, the health of the athlete is so important, and it's like these players aren't making a lot of money, but they need to be playing as much as they are in order to make enough money to have a lifestyle, and they're not living lavish lifestyles, many of them.
No.
And so there are all of these different things that are so different about the women's game that people aren't always aware of. And that's, again, mainly because there hasn't been a lot of exposure about it. There hasn't been a lot of information shared about it. And so I think the spotlight is good on helping people understand what the reality is for women's athletes and women's teams. And we've already seen some really major changes in just this, last year, that are better for the athletes, which is what we need. Is we need the athletes to be taken care of so that they can continue to be performing at the level that they're competing at.
Yep.
I think so.
Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah. I think too that it's good stuff. It's one of those strange seasons in the WNBA where it's the only one like it, I think, that runs right after the season ends, and it kicks off without that break in between. So it's tough. But I wanted to say earlier, before when we were talking about the sports and what's going on, it's a state girls high school softball coming up this weekend is going to be, and then we can't forget college women's NCAA. Tournaments are kicking off right now at this end of the year too. There's so many things going on, and I know yourself. You're a Lynx fan, season ticket holder, correct?
Yes.
Now we did see your hockey jersey on the wall. That was yours, right? And what is that from?
It's so funny. Everybody thinks it's mine, which it's my cousin, actually. It's actually not mine. So I did not play hockey. I was tennis, gymnastics, and softball.
Okay.
But I'm old enough that we didn't keep our jerseys when I played. Like, you didn't get to keep your jersey. You had like the same jersey that you had to wear the next year, and then the next year you had to give it to the freshmen. So like, we never got to keep our jerseys.
You're lucky you got the same number all 4 years.
Literally. And the sports I played, softball was really the only one that we maybe would have had our names on the back of it. But again, we definitely didn't, because we traded jerseys year after year after year. So that hockey jersey in the bar, my cousin Tara Hiscock was a big, big hockey stud up at Bemidji State. She played.
Go Beavers!
There. Yeah,
that's my daughter went BSU. Go Beavers!
Yeah. So and Tara's older sister Kate is my age, and she played for D3 schools. So yes, I was not a hockey player at all.
I figured, I didn't want to assume, and I thought, and I ended up doing that. I thought that's got to be her jersey. That's awesome.
Yeah, a lot of people think I'm a hockey player based on that jersey alone, which, I get it. I understand why.
Yeah.
And it's a unique enough last name that it's not like, oh, it's just some random jersey. It's like, no, it's clearly somebody from my family.
Another Smith up there, great.
Yeah, exactly. But yes, that's my cousin Tara. She was a big stud. I think that was one of her select jerseys from high school or something like that. So
nice. Yeah, but we did like the food, the menu, the ambiance. The memorabilia is incredible, and like you said, with the sports coming up, and the timing with all of this. I mean, with the sports, the women's sports interest is such a high point right now, and starting up a bar like this just at this exact same time. I mean, you couldn't have forecasted it any better. It's not like you were trying to start it in 2020 with the COVID and it kept getting pushed back. You just actually opened it this March in 2024, so you don't have to deal with all that as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And the timing for us, like I always knew once we decided we were going to do it, which was really July of last year. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago. But that was when I basically said, like, if we're going to do this, we have to be open by the Big Ten tournament, because Minneapolis hosted the Big Ten tournament here in Minneapolis. And and I was
that was the benchmark.
So that was really like, that was March 6th through the 10th. And I was like, we have to be open by the Big Ten tournament. And everybody told me, like, you will never open a restaurant in less than a year. And I was like, okay, but I will. I have a lot of project management experience, and so all of it's just, following deadlines and pushing things and keeping things on track. And so so that was the goal. I had somebody like, it was really quite lucky of you to be open. And I was like, it wasn't like I planned that, people. Like, come on, give me some credit. Like, I knew it would be a big weekend. I knew it would be a big tournament, and that the attention, I mean, quite frankly, the attention is so long overdue that by now I've talked to women from probably 20, 25 other cities around the country and the world that are working on doing the same thing in their own communities. And so, I mean, it's absolutely, it's great to be kind of on the front end of this. And it's quite frankly just the beginning of what we're going to see. I think we're going to see a lot more of these things popping up all over the country. Which is great, because women's sports just haven't had that platform. And so we've waited and waited and waited for what I call men's sports bars to do the same thing, and they haven't. And so we're just going to pick up the torch and do our own thing. And I think at the same time, it's great to see, even since we've opened, I've noticed a lot of other sports bars in the Twin Cities that are playing women's sports.
Yeah, they got
and so I do think there's this ripple effect. Like, even if, whatever sports bar down the street isn't going to turn into a women's sports bar, it's likely that they're going to start playing more women's sports. And to me, the goal has always been more eyes on women's sports, period. Yeah. Like, I can't be the only women's sports the only place in town showing women's sports. I mean, it's a conversation I had this last weekend when we filled up for the PWHL game. I literally called ahead to 3 or 4 other places before we opened to say, like, are you showing the game? Because we have 85 seats.
I have overflow parking. I got to send your way.
And I hope and know that there's more than 85 women's sports fans in the country or in the city. So can I send them to your bar, please, to watch the game? And so people are starting to realize, like, that this is a market and an untapped community that has not really been catered to.
Awesome. So true. So true. Andy, do you have any questions for Jillian?
Just one last one. The show is sports and songs. So are you ever open up one where you have music only, like women bands, female bands?
Goodness, I have not even thought about that. It's funny. People are like, when's your second location going to open? And I'm like, I've been open for 70 days. Like, let me get to like 1 year, and then I'll start thinking about second locations or second concepts maybe. I'm a huge music nerd. I was actually a music major in college. And so I do love me some music, but that sounds like a really great project for somebody else to
have her on the songs episode sometime.
Yes, that's awesome.
Talk to music.
Awesome. I don't have anything else for Jillian, and Andy, if you don't either. But Jillian, just want to say thanks for the show, for being on and taking time out of your busy day, and good luck with everything. That we'll certainly be back there to watch some sporting events.
Awesome.
And the Olympics should be very busy come end of July. Is that when all that kicks off? Is end of July. So
Yep. All right. Thank you very much for being on.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for it, guys.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.